What's going on, everybody? Just Haley here, and I am back again with another video. Today's video is for the frame you can already see, and that is Citrine. This video is for the recrystallized augment version of Citrine that I run. It's a really fun, really consistent, and just really badass support in Warframe. I absolutely love her ability to provide not only some survivability to teammates in the form of damage reduction and healing, but also gives status duration, status chance to the team, and with the recrystallized augment, she's pretty much giving an endless amount of red crits to teammates as well, and it's going to propagate with the build that we're running today pretty much throughout the entire map. It's super fun, it's very consistent, and I love playing it. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you guys do, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, as it does help me out a ton. But let's get right into how the build works, and then I'll show you guys the build. Now, this build does not use any subsumes, though there are some options for that if you so choose. The options for subsumes are either going to be something for damage reduction, like Null Star, which would actually work really well in this build. You could also use something like Eclipse if you wanted the flexibility of damage reduction or a little bit of damage to the weapons. It's always going to be good. Citrine's a fantastic option for a weapon platform frame. And the other option for subsumes is anything that's going to group enemies together, because how her gem works, her 3 works, you're going to be able to do a lot of damage to any enemies that are grouped up together. Now, Larva works really well with a build like this, but if you wanted to do something like Ensnare, that's a good option too. Of course, you could also go for something more damaging like Roar, though I don't really like the way it synergizes with this kit. It's absolutely an option if you so chose. However, for today, we're going to be focusing on a no subsume build for Citrine. So this is the out-of-box Citrine. That's because I really do like everything that you get out of her kit. Now, obviously, since we are not subsuming anything, the 4 is going to be our primary focus with that augment. We are going to be using recrystallize for the crystallize ability. It's going to spread throughout the entire map. You'll always hear comments and stuff like that from people who are multiple rooms away, just end up with the red crits start happening. It's really funny. The other thing that we're going to be using is Prismatic Gem. Tons of range here is going to allow that big buff area, as well as a ton of status spread, especially when you combine it with Fractured Blast, allowing it to beam up to 3 enemies, and that punches through enemies that it might pass along the way, so that's cool too. And then Preserving Shell for a ton of damage reduction. That also applies to teammates. It's a great way to keep teammates who might be a little bit newer to Steel Path, or just in general keep teammates alive. It's a really good tanking tool. All that combines with her passive, which is going to be up to 25 health regen per second, which is just a nice little tool on top of everything. And then you're going to combine all of this with her Sentinel to allow her to really tank and really take advantage of some new kind of combinations that I've been using a little bit more for some unique ways to stay alive. It's really fun, and I really enjoyed this build. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So let's start with the mandatory mods. Now, the first mandatory mods that I think are here are obviously going to be recrystallized, but I also like a ton of range, and then adaptation as well. The ton of range is going to allow you to get a much larger buff radius. Your status spread from your prismatic gem is going to be better, and your recrystallize will chain to enemies a lot more smoothly and create a gameplay loop where you don't have to continually recast it and then hope that it then chains to enough enemies. You're just going to always notice that enemies pretty much have it up. There are going to be a few times where it drops off, but it's going to be few and far between. And that's really nice. It makes the gameplay for Citrine really smooth. It also gives a huge fractured blast, so you can pretty much target an entire group from far away to make sure that you're getting extra health orbs and energy orbs for yourself and your team. Now, the other thing that I think is mandatory is some form of power strength in the form of an Intensify, or you could even potentially run Transient Fortitude in that spot, and then some form of health. In this case, I went with the double Umbra, but if you wanted to do Archon Vitality, you could do that with the Transient Fortitude. It would be really good as well. You're going to get the doubled up fire procs from the Prismatic Gem, which is nice for damage. However, I don't really feel like I needed that, and I already had the double Umbra in, so this build just kind of made sense, and it's the one that I'm showcasing here. Adaptation, pretty obvious. You're just going to get more tankiness out of it. It's really good. And then I do run Archon Continuity for that little bit of extra duration. It's going to make you not have to cast Preserving Shell as often. It's going to make sure that your Prismatic Gem stays up really smoothly. Feels really good. And then Blind Rage makes up for your overextended, dropping your strength. And that's just a cost of efficiency, which you can cover with the Fractured Blast, creating more orbs. Feels really good as well. Prime Sure-Footed is in here. You don't need to run it if you wanted to run Handspring, but I have Prime Sure-Footed, so I'm going to run that. If you wanted to run something like Cunning Drift for a little bit more range, I also think that's a really good option too. It's kind of up to you. And then Brief Respite is for the little bit of shield gating to make sure that I'm constantly taking damage to the shields, and that's because I do run Aegis in this build. Now the Aegis interaction might need a little bit of explanation, but essentially you have 2 sources of damage reduction, 3 if you count the innate damage reduction on shields, and the armor that you have on the frame. So what ends up happening is you have Adaptation and Preserving Shell, keeping your damage reduction really high. Add that into Aegis and Brief Respite. So Brief Respite makes sure you're constantly taking shield damage, which then takes you constantly proccing Aegis, which means you're constantly keeping your shields topped off. It's really strong for this interaction. It allows you to very cleanly keep yourself tanking and shield gating, while also having a little bit of armor and a little bit more damage reduction on the side should your health become vulnerable. If you wanted to combine this with an extra source of damage reduction that could also serve as a damage ability, Nullstar becomes a really cool thing for Citrine to be able to use, especially with all the range that we're running here and the positive power strength, positive duration. It would synergize very well. Just to figure out if you want to maybe take off Stretch for that extra augment, that would be an option that you could do too. And now Shards, this shouldn't take that long to go into her Shards, but I do use 1 Equilibrium Shard. I do use 2 Cast Speed Shards. If you feel like her Cast Speed is fine without them, you could absolutely run fewer. And then I do run 2 Armor Shards. The Armor Shards and the Equilibrium Shard are absolutely mandatory for this because, again, I am running that Arcane Battery to help her energy so I don't have to run flow. If you took away 1 Cast Speed Shard, an extra Armor Shard will also help her not only be able to run that extra battery for the energy there, but makes her health a little bit tankier in case she ever does take a hit there. It is really nice. It also helps on some of her non-shield gating builds that I do run. That's always an option if you choose. Now going back to some synergies on how she stays tanky, you can see the pet that I'm running here is the Taxon. The Taxon has a very specific module that it can use, which is Molecular Conversion. It's a way to not only prime using Manifold Bond, but it also offers another way to gain shields from your pet. It's really nice, so you can combine it with Guardian to make sure that you're constantly getting shields back. Manifold Bond, you have so many enemies with so many statuses, it's really easy to keep this going constantly, so you're constantly getting extra shields back. And then I went with Assault Mode, Synth Deconstruct. Those are really basic just to continue creating those orbs. Also works really well for other frames too. Primed Regen is so that when you combine it with Momentous, you're constantly getting it back whenever it dies. You only have to kill pretty much 1 Xmas and then 1 enemy with a couple elements on them, and you're good to go already. Duplex creates a bunch of copies, and then Vacuum is obvious there. Primed Animal Instinct is obviously optional, but I really like the convenience of it. I've been switching to it a lot in a lot of my builds. Totally up to you if you don't think you need it, but I think it is just way too convenient not to use it. And then we do pair that with the Artax. Now my Artax build does use a Riven. The Riven is just for viral, so don't worry about that too much. And then I also use Shivering Contagion. That tends to be more of a detriment than a help, but it is fun to see the enemies freeze from across the map. It's nice, but you really don't need it if you don't want to use it. The only mods there that are nice and I would say mandatory would be Prime Shred, Thermite Rounds, Vial Acceleration, Radiated Reload, Galvanized Aptitude, and Galvanized Chamber. If you swap out the Riven and Shivering Contagion, you can make your own viral so that you can keep that in as well. That's going to work really well not only with the weapon just being able to prime from the duplex, but you're also going to be able to use that in tandem with your Manifold Bond to make sure that any precept that causes damage is spreading radiation, heat, cold, and viral. It's going to feel really good. This is because the Artax has an innate passive that gives it guaranteed cold, so that cold is always going to be on the weapon. Really, really nice, spreads really well, and I really enjoy being able to use this. It combines well with the Taxon, but I also use it sometimes on my Nautilus too. And that's pretty much everything you need to know about the build and the pet that goes along with it. As far as weapon recommendations, if you're looking for anything specific, I don't have it. I can say the Kuva Comb, or the Quanta Vandal, or the Kuva Ogress, things like that. Anything that synergizes really well with status is going to be great. The Epitaph is a fantastic choice, especially if you run Fortifier. It's going to be a really, really good option for her. It gives her an extra layer of tankiness here. I do use it here sometimes, but I tried very hard in the gameplay not to use it too much because I wanted to let the other parts of the kit shine and make sure that I wasn't crutching on things like overguard gaining and things like that. So you don't see me get that too often during the gameplay that you saw here today on the Kuva Fortress, Kuva Survival. Overall, the build functions really well with influence, but you could also use something like harmony if you wanted to do that too, and that's going to be a good option for her with anything melee. Melee influence though definitely shines more. It's a really, really strong effect to be able to give you tons of extra status chance to the point that you're just spreading so much, and it turns certain melee influence weapons like the Caratinos or the Arm Spinosa into absolute shredders. I'm also using the Furax in this video. Now I have a puppy pawing at my lap, so that is going to bring us to the end of this video for Citrine. Overall, she's an incredible frame. She's so good at not only supporting the team through added crit, through added health regen, through added tankiness, and through added status and status effects, but also through just bringing a ton of damage on her own. She's an exceptional frame. She does so well. Her kit synergizes so well, and I really love playing her. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to smash that like button. It does help me out a ton. Leave a comment below with what video you might want to see next, what frame build you might want to see next, or what you're excited for with 1999. I know that is just around the corner. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have an amazing day, and until next time, remember, I love your faces. Bye.